I would say it's not a complete wash if Chainsaw Man exists. Like, I think that's incredibly formative and hopefully inspires a lot of upcoming manga. And I hope part two is really exciting. I just think it was so genius to take the same route as JoJo's, where it's a uniform story, and now we can anticipate the anime to be a full adaptation of something, and it's not just like it just kind of ends where it does.
Yeah.
Just so genius, and I'm so excited for that, especially on a production standpoint, with hearing about the director, who's the same director as Black Clover, who was very like into. It was a long running show, but he made sure that like the animators were having a good time. They were able to express themselves. There's whole episodes that are very distinct and in this unique style or whatever. And it was kind of a more engaging, interesting production in that way. So it's just really promising, and it's promising with like the way he's reaching out to new animators, and he's like, we're gonna train them, because there's this big problem with animators like only lasting an average of 3 years. Like they're kind of, there's a revolving door right now, and there's not a lot of sustainability in this, which is a huge problem for anime right now. We're kind of going through this glut period. I think Chainsaw Man hopefully is a moment for it to be a watershed moment, not just for manga, but for anime as well. For its production, for its adaptation and production to be something that's kind of a standout moment, and something that kind of hopefully changes the paradigm shift to go more quality over quantity. That's just like my fantasize, like kind of pie in the sky hopes. I think like there might not be a whole lot to substantiate based on. I just have a good feeling with Chainsaw Man that not only is it going to have this influence, but it's also going to be a massive hit. And I think the massive hit means that there's influence there, and they're like, oh, that worked. Maybe we should try to replicate that. That's something I want to see replicated potentially, if that's the direction it goes. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time for sure, but it is certainly one to be looking at in terms of like a waning, and like with some concern. I could understand that.
Yeah, I think with Chainsaw Man, it's doing something that's very unique and something that shonen in general needs. All of the shonen magazines really need to look at what Chainsaw Man is, and you pointed out all of the great things about it. It's a dark series, but it's not too dark. It's very unique in the way that it tells a story, but we've seen it done before with other shonen, and I absolutely do believe, especially with the fanfare that it's been receiving on Twitter with Anitubers, that it will change things. I haven't felt so excited for a series in a really long time. Just reading Chainsaw Man, it reminded me of the excitement I felt when I first picked up Tenjo Tenge when I was 15 years old. I remember all of those really cool series that were just a little bit more than what I was reading in other shonens. They were a little bit darker. They were a little bit more real, even if they were doing ridiculous things. But it also influenced the scene afterwards. I think that like the same way Tokyo Ghoul kind of made things very tragic and gothic like, Chainsaw Man will do that. It has a really strong element of surprise with its storytelling as well. It's not just, anything can happen, it's anything will happen. When you're reading this story, you're not just like, will they, won't they, or is he going to fight the rival, is this going to happen? Things are going to happen, and they're happening at a breakneck pace. So I'm really looking forward to what Jump does. I'm hoping they take more chances with series going forward, but I also hope mangaka look at what was happening with Chainsaw Man and Fire Force, and even like unique series like Spy Family and Sakamoto Days. All of these like really cool series that you see familiarity with what they're doing, but it's very fresh, and it's still a little too soon to say if they're really going to change all the manga and anime that we're going to get throughout the next decade, but it is an exciting time, and it reminds me so much of when I was younger.
Definitely. What's nice about Chainsaw Man that's sort of different from the grimdark stuff, because you could say that in Tokyo Ghoul, as well as like that era in the early 2010s, if we're strictly talking anime, if we're talking like Attack on Titan, there's the major proponent of that, of more like incredible twists and like kind of grimdark stuff. But like there's something different with Chainsaw Man where it's very grim, it's dark in that way, but it's also really funny. It's also like really crass, and like it has this energy to it that is really addictive and adrenaline pumping. It's not like it's not you can't really say Attack on Titan has its quirky moments, or Tokyo Ghoul has its quirky moments, but it's it's not the main character's, like the main character's like one of his motivations is like he just wants to touch boobs. Like that's just so like kind of wacky and like, but it's viscerally interesting, and it's contrasted with this like it's a grimdark narrative that we've kind of seen before of like the tragic main character goes through this like horrible whatever, but the, the direction of it is interesting. Yeah, I remember like the first chapter of it coming out, and people were like, "Ooh!" and we're like, "Please!" But we're also in that period of like, "Please don't get axed! Please don't get axed!" Like it's like hard to get it's hard to get your hopes up for some of these series because you don't know if they're going to let them die or not. And you don't want to get invested in that way. But then if you don't get invested in it, and you're like, "Don't act," like if you don't do that, it will get axed. So you kind of have to put your faith in it, and just like you just have to actually come forward and buy the initial volume and stuff and show up for it and put that faith in it. It's like, I want this to continue. That it'll inevitably get its success, hopefully. So that's very fortunate with Chainsaw Man, and I'm grateful that it's gotten the following and the popularity that it has before the animes even come out. I can't even just like, do you remember like how little people talked about JJK? Like it just didn't seem like on anybody's radar.
Yeah.
And the minute this anime came out, it couldn't leave anybody's mouth. Yeah. Like it was all over. And I was like, oh my God. Like that was the first, like I get like the anime does something like kind of hits different, and there's a heightened awareness when the anime comes out. Like I knew about that, but I never experienced it the same way as like when the way JJK happened. I was like, oh my God, now everyone's fucking Jesus Christ. It was just crazy. So to think of like how many people are aware and are talking about Chainsaw Man before the animes even come out compared to something like Demon Slayer or JJK, I can't imagine what it's gonna be like, dude. Unless they botch it, but like we'll see. I don't think we'll see. I think even if it's like humdrum of an adaptation and it just doesn't turn out the same way as JJK, it's still a great story. I feel it'll still be really cool to see it in an animated form. I'm still optimistic about it. But oh God, if it pops on top of being like a good story, like
oh my God,
no, oh no,
that would be so lit. I hope so. And see, that's the thing. Also, like I want to build off of something you just said. Maybe this is just me. Maybe this is me being too much of a critic. But a lot of the Jump series coming out, the art's not very good. Like I can see why a lot of people weren't talking about Chainsaw Man, because with Chainsaw Man, the character design is pretty interesting. Like even if it's not the best art you've ever seen, there are still moments where it's like it's so visually stunning. You really want to see what's going to happen next, and even like the way the panels are drawn, it's so unique. Like sometimes I'll go back on like an old, like I have Shonen Jump here, and I remember when I first got it, it was like chapter like 13 or something, and I can't read Japanese, but I remember just looking at the pages, and I'm like, this is very unique art. It's not the best art, but it's a unique way of drawing. And when I look at Chainsaw Man, not JJK. Chainsaw Man had that very unique way of like art. JJK's art isn't good. I thought the manga's art was really bad. The anime does a very good service in improving on that and making it look visually stunning. But then that's also the case with Promised Neverland.